Alright, so for week 7, just be able to give out some functions of the placenta. I wrote it transports nutrients, helps with gas exchange, helps with waste excretion, and can also be immunomodulatory, right? Now you're going to have the chorion, and essentially the chorion, if you remember, is the outside of that cell that is invading into the myometrium, and its villi become highly vascular and project into the maternal blood supply. They're essentially what is going to form the true placenta. So what you have to take away from this is that the chorion is going to form the true placenta. And if you looked at the slide or in the lecture, essentially it's going to be forming from the extra embryonic mesoderm. Now, on the picture, the chorion surrounds everything, but looks only on the lumen side. Yeah, so essentially on the slide, if you notice the slide in lecture, it seems as if the chorion is only on the lumen side, and I think in the slide itself, it's kind of like only at the bottom. And this actually isn't the case. It's just because this process is highly invasive, and so it looks like it's only on the bottom, but it's actually on the top as well, as it's being just compressed in the picture. So hopefully that makes sense. Refer to the lecture slide. But the main thing is that the chorion is going to be forming the true placenta, and it's coming from the extra embryonic mesoderm. It's highly vascularized, and it's essentially projecting into the maternal blood supply. Now, in terms of histology, this is very, very, very important. You have 3 trimesters in pregnancy. In the first one, essentially you're going to have large chorionic villi. There are going to be no prominent capillaries. In the second trimester, the villi are going to become smaller and more vascular, and essentially you're going to have this thinning of this cytotrophoblast. And in the third trimester, it's going to be highly vascularized villi. The cytotrophoblasts are going to decline relative to the syncytiotrophoblasts, mainly because they're no longer serving their function anymore. You don't really have to get into that. But the main thing to note is that we're increasing vascularization as we go through the trimesters. And yes, you may be able to, you may be asked in, let's say, an MSAT or short answer even to identify the different trimesters based on the slide or image presented. Now, the hormones are also very important to know. If you remember ACG, this is LH-like hormone, so it's maintaining the corpus luteum, and it's also going to suppress the maternal immune system. Estrogen is going to enlarge the uterus, relax the pelvic ligaments, and block PRL. Progesterone is going to maintain endometrium, and I believe this is also going to block prolactin. Relaxin, as the name suggests, is the relaxing hormone. So it's going to relax the ligaments. Why do we need to relax the ligaments? This is because there's a child there. So if the ligaments are relaxed, there's more space for the child. And it also helps with cervical softening. Now there's this thing called HCS. Notice it's not HCG. It's a different hormone. A lot of people get confused. And likely because of that confusion, it could be asked. So what HCS is doing is it's decreasing our glucose metabolism, and this is because we want all the glucose to be sent to the fetus, and it's increasing our fatty acid metabolism for the mother. Now, in terms of HCT, this is going to be increasing maternal metabolism. There's no real acronym, just go over it, maybe write it out a couple of times. That should really help. And then CRH is just going to be stimulating cortisol production. You should remember this from endo, I believe. Now, in terms of big changes in pregnancy, we're going to have breast development, increased vascularization of our repro organs. We're going to have uterine enlargement, and this can also cause lordosis. So lordosis is just increased curvature in our lumbar spine region, and this essentially is just contributing to back pain. Now, we're also going to have increased appetite, increased fatty acid metabolism. Again, I'm going to drive home the point of HCS. This is decreasing glucose metabolism, increasing fatty acid metabolism. Very important that you know all of these hormones and all of their functions. And essentially, now I want to talk about, well, what actually determines the whether the child is going to be male or female. So essentially, you're going to have our SRY gene, and this is going to be present on the Y chromosome. And as such, if you have the SRY gene, you're going to have the XY chromosomes, and your sex, or at least your gonadal sex, is going to be male, versus if it's absent, it's going to be XX, therefore you're going to be female. So essentially, the SRY gene is leading to the many steps, and I'm just simplifying it down to stimulating the Sertoli cells to produce MIF, and this is going to support the latex cells. And if you remember, the latex cells are what are going to be producing those androgens. And essentially the Leydig cells are going to form the epididymis and ductus deferens later on, which are going to serve as essentially the precursors to the male gonads. Now, I also wanted to highlight that in the lecture there is this anatomy slide that has these Wolffian ducts and paramesonephric ducts, and that is important, and it's important you learn all of the anatomy on that slide. It's more of just a memorizing thing, so I'm not going to explain it because there isn't really much explaining to do. Another thing that can help is Google searching the different functions of the Wolffian ducts and mesonephric ducts. Yes, it's a little niche, but it does help with understanding. Now, in terms of female development, remember, we're not going to have SRI, so therefore we're not going to have MIF being released. And as such, the mesonephric ducts survive, versus here, in terms of males, the mesonephric ducts are being dissolved, and the Leydig cells are forming epididymis and ductus deferens. Because the mesonephric ducts survived here, they're going to form the uterine tubes and a host of other functions that are covered in the lecture. Now, there are three definitions here that you should know: genetic sex versus gonadal sex versus phenotypic sex. Genetic sex is just XY or XX. Gonadal sex is what hormones you're producing, and phenotypic sex is your internal/external genitalia.